the cost of independent redevelopment of the same product is high, or because of IPR issues. Unfortunately, a branded consumer product, sometimes of doubtful value, can also get a large geographical spread because of the use of advertisement power. In the case of innovative rural technology products, the cost of technology transfer, and we are talking of inclusive growth. In the case of rural technology innovative products, the cost of technology transfer can be more than that of re-innovation once the concept is grasped. So I think, and I have been saying this, that in the case of rural development, rural technology development and delivery, we should be trying not only technology transfer, well, wherever it's feasible one can do that, but of concept transfer followed by re-innovation. Now, this word re-innovation has been used by somebody like Roy Rothwell, but his definition is very similar, almost synonymous with incremental innovation of an industrial product. The Chinese have used the word re-innovation. They talk about introduction, absorption, digestion, and re-innovation in all high technology products. But I use the word re-innovation in the context of rural development in the sense of repetitive but suo moto innovation, starting from the same core concept and ending in nearly the same product. Now, this kind of innovation seems to be inevitable in the context of rural development because of variations in raw material resource, taste, skills, or even the subcultures. In fact, it is also perhaps desirable because every innovation center is a wealth creating center, and we want 1,000 such innovative technology delivery centers around the country.
You have to speed up.
I'm speeding up.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So we started from our office something called RUTAG. I'll not go into the details of this unless somebody is interested. Rural Technology Action Group is an open platform innovation strategy, because rural development for hilly areas is different from that of coastal areas, and for that for the plains. Now we can also talk of collaborative innovation, which is the theme of the meeting in Davos in 2008. And there, collaborative innovation with sharing of intellectual property rights. But we also need, I think, altruistic collaborative innovation in areas like pandemic diseases and the climate change threat. Now, it is in this context that one should think of the National Knowledge Network. You heard about it this morning, which will finally connect 1,500 universities, national labs, and other R&D institutions. About a third of them are already connected. We have used it for virtual classrooms, the old IITs mentoring the new IITs. We are also encouraging in very super specialized areas where the faculty is fragmented. One can get together faculty from various places, students from various institutions, and then the lectures can be shared. We can create specialized grids for applications like climate change. There's already a grid for climate change centered in IIT Pune. You can have it for brain research. For example, in Montreal, McGill, Montreal has a very good neurological institute. They have their network, Canary, connects all institutions, MRI images, for example, for Alzheimer's. And our National Brain Research Center is doing the same thing, connecting all our institutions. And we hopefully will be able to share the data with Canada and Europe and all that, because once you have an optical fiber low latency network of this type, multi-gigabit per second, which is being implemented by National Informatics Center under the guidance of Dr. B.K. Gairola. CSIR has talked about open source drug discovery. I think Samir talked about it sometime. Research collaboration. My colleagues in BARC, for instance, are able to access the synchrotron source in Grenoble sitting in Bombay. Because once you have an X-ray beam there, you can send your protein crystals, bring it to the beam, you can select the crystal, and then you can decide which crystal you will collect the data from. And once you have a network of this capability, it all comes streaming in here. To conclude, if India is to become a knowledge economy, we must be proactive in the introduction of new technological innovations. And in promoting this speedy introduction, and this introduction has to be speedy, and then you have to scale these advanced technologies. The first introduction is the most important step. If you are hesitant in it, then of course you can never become a knowledge economy. And then we can allow the potential for revolutionary incremental innovations. And once you have the knowledge network, you can access databases, supercomputers at a distance. And so scaling of innovation, both in high-tech areas and for rural products, is essential for both rapid national development and rapid rural development. And in this, as the Prime Minister said this morning, our diversity, our democracy, and our demography can all help. I think this is all I wanted to say at the beginning.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Next is Dr. Sathuranda.
I am Member Planning Commission. Thank you, Mr. Sam Pitroda, for this privilege of talking today morning on the innovation aspects. I will specifically touch on the innovation that we try to bring in the areas of governance and decision making through the creation of a national geographic information system. I start with the first of the projections here, where I really recreate Sam's 3 pillars of democracy. Add the 4th pillar which he has done, and it is the public information infrastructure. The key element of the public information infrastructure is the information as lever of economic and social development, and information available in real time. These are the key elements. And that has been split into 4 areas. Of course, the National Knowledge Network we had just now, the National GIS, the Geographic Information System, and we'll hear from Nanden, the UID, and of course leading to the e-governance. So we have the 4 elements. I will touch on one of the elements of this innovative pillar that Sam has created, and that is related to the Geographic Information System, a new information regime supporting good governance, sustainable development, and citizen empowerment. And of course, it is important to note that GIS is an information system related to spatial domain. And this is derived as the product of imageries, survey maps, mapping, as well as geotagged tabular data. So using this information, this is the one that creates the information, and we propose to do this with a very innovative structure. We will see this an Indian National GIS organization, and which will offer a number of services, GIS decision support services, governance, private enterprise, and so on and so forth, through a technological base which is related to a nationwide, standardized, seamless, and most current GIS asset for the nation. The difference that, I think this is not, okay. The difference that the GIS, national GIS will make with respect to what is currently there existing in the country is, one, it of course provides a transparency of governance, determining equitable system. These are all the improvement elements that it will bring to bear, besides of course the timely availability of certain type of decision. And when it comes to the decision making, the determining the efficient decision option, the current decisions are made with respect to specific sectorial inputs. What the present system is to call upon more than one sector input for overall decision making, because most of the decision making today are a complex interplay of several important inputs, whether it is economic, whether it is social, geographical, technological, and also natural resource based. So one need to bring in the inputs from these kind of inputs, and that is precisely what the National GIS will do, and that provides an efficient decision option. It has, of course, measurable metrics for the performance. And if you look at it from that particular point, what we try to do is we sense, we measure, and we track. And as inputs from this will go into the integrate and modeling that will provide the decision support, and ultimately it serves a variety of purposes. You can access this in terms of what you want is an information, and ultimately it can also be used for data mining. On the other side, I saw a variety of areas in which this kind of an applicability exists, whether it is in energy, whether it is in transport, sustainable natural resource, rural transformation, and so on and so forth. I'll just quickly go through in the next one the history of the mapping, because that is very crucial to why we are able to create this system in this country. We had this mapping as a capability way back in the 7th century. The Chola dynasty, I think, seemed to have historically introduced this. Then, of course, the famous Ayni Akbari, around 1600, the early maps were produced. They were not really maps alone. They were even sketches and diagrams. And then first major area of geodetic survey, which came as what you call as the Great Arc, came into picture around 1800. It took about 60 years, 40,000 people. But what characterized this, the Great Arc, is the one which specified the shape of the earth in this region, number one. It really enabled measurements in terms of distances. And so this was really a very important topographic survey. And it, of course, involved good mathematics, good modeling, and above all, the areas which is related to measurements, measurement techniques. And from there, we took off to topographic surveys. The topographic surveys were conducted twice between the period 1800 and now. And these are the topo sheets that are available. And in the meanwhile, the Survey of India was created as a formal agency to do this. And then from there, we graduated into digital mapping. And that was made possible because of the advent of satellite systems. So around 1980s, especially with Indian remote sensing satellite, we created this kind of a digital mapping system. What is interesting to note is from several hundred years to 60 years for mapping, 40 years for mapping, the satellite era opened up at 10 years, 5 years, and today even 1 year within which we do the entire mapping for the country. So one can see the time frame in which it has shrunk by creation of this. And this also introduced for the first time a decision support system in terms of multi-layer information, and that today is available in the sectoral mode. The national GIS, about which I say a few words, is really related to integrating these in a multi-dimensional mode in terms of bringing into decision multi-parameters. So I take the next slide to show you the importance of this kind of an approach. The fun is, of course, we have now the extensive ground survey data, maps are there. We have the cadastral maps. This belongs to many states in the country. Then now you have the satellite imageries. And then you have the need of a decision support system for the country. So what you need is a GIS-ready data, a current and nationwide, and a GIS standard for the national resource. There are a number of systems already existing. We need to create a GIS standard from all this. And of course, there are various routes in which, from the basic data, we can reach that particular point. So what are the key innovation issues that this leads to? We have to have a need for easy to use GIS decision support system. We have to have, the nation should be assured of a GIS ready data, and ultimately an institutional mechanism which is responsible for this critical technology and application capability. So I go to give you just one example in this connection. You have this groundwater. Groundwater, of course, has been explored from historic times. In 90s, for example, there was this water divining to locate it, maybe 30%, 40% success. And then, of course, went into a little scientific basis for this resistivity surveys, scientific area surveys, and so on and so forth. So this is the kind of a thing. From there, we took off in terms of satellite imageries. The satellite imageries enabled us to create multiple maps, lithology maps, geomorphology maps, hydrology maps, structural maps, base maps, and so on. And out of which came a hydrogeomorphological map, a fairly complex in terms of the information content, but nevertheless a critical information in terms of identifying where the groundwater could be and what the charging strategy could be. But from here to go to the next step, and that is what the national GIS represents, is to look for a particular area. For example, a farmer wants to know for his field what is the kind of availability of data on the water and other associated elements. So you can have the additional parameters brought in, synthesized, modeled, and you get a printout like that which is directly usable by the farmer. And this is precisely what it will do. It's an extremely user-friendly system where you use the most modern techniques of satellite imagery, surveying, and so on and so forth, but use modeling techniques which ultimately leads to decision support for a farmer. So this is the kind of a thing. Now, let us just summarize this by in terms of the various elements on which the GIS today represents. The next one I show the national GIS, the various elements of a national GIS system that India proposes to set up. One is, of course, the natural infrastructure. The infrastructure could be the national knowledge network. It could also be related to cloud computing and many other kinds of elements. The national GIS asset, that is the maps, the topo sheets, the tabular data, and so on and so forth, suitably formatized, suitably standardized with respect to various types of normalizing the various data inputs. National GIS application, which is the most critical thing, like the water I sold, there are several areas on which this particular application will happen. And then national GIS portal, which will be the access point for the system, and a national GIS capacity building, which is extremely critical in the context of ensuring that you have the right human resource base for carrying this on. And so this leads to a capability. This capability can be at least broadly divided into threefold. The governance modules, we have conducted something like 25 government departments who are shown interest in creating this capability for their own decision support. So you have one module coming out of that. The enterprise module, the commercial component of it, we have put a few of them here. And lastly, the public information and the e-governance and so on. That is the third component of it. So one can see the clear delineation of the various types of services that such a national system can provide in terms of providing not only an information, timely information, updating the information, and also in terms of decision support. The organizational, in this thing, I won't go into the details of this. This is going to be a very unique system. We have already a lot of activities going on in the country in terms of the GIS activities, the satellite-based image processing activity, the topo sheet being used for many places. These are all in the pockets in different locations. The whole idea of this system is to synergize it, to model it and provide unique methods of decision making which can come out of this. A value you add to each of those databases by bringing the synergy between that database and other databases which are related to it in terms of a particular decision. So this is the most important aspect of it. We propose to use the entire network of databases in the country, standardize them, and also make sure that we have a means of synergizing them through the various models. So I include this with the innovation to scale, what that Sam has wanted us to talk about. So you have this system that we are establishing for the country. We will have a technological innovation, imaging, GPS, GIS, all will be brought to bear. We need to have a policy innovation. We have now mapping policies, we have the remote sensing policies, but we need to have a national GIS policy. You need to bring in application innovation. I said something about it. I won't go into the detail. Institutional innovation, multiple institutions have to play a role. And at the same time, they have to make sure that the data is updated not only at the local level, but also at the national level. Then innovation of scale, time scale. I said about 1 year or 10 days. It could be 1 month. So depending on the type of applications that we are looking for, we will have a innovation scale. And lastly, we are also making sure that this particular system could ultimately be also dovetailed to a global system. And here, what we are trying to look for is there may be certain type of information which has to be global. For example, the meteorological data. And when you want to do a modeling for climatological modeling, you obviously take the whole globe, divide it into various cells, and then put all those critical physical parameters, atmospheric parameters, and then do the modeling with respect to the various cells and then interact with them. So this is the kind of a modeling which needs global data, standardized data, data coming from different sources. So this system can adopt to those kind of global requirements when it comes to things like climate modeling and so on, also so oceans, disaster management, and things of that kind. So in a sense, even though I talked about the national GIS, Sam had given me the title as the Global Information System. I conclude to say that the Global Information System will be a natural offshoot of the national system that we are creating in the context of create sophisticated decision support for a variety of endeavors that this country will have in the coming years. Thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nandan?
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for inviting me to this very excellent gathering. I'll briefly speak about the Unique Identification Authority, which I head, and the Aadhaar program, which is what we do. This was something which came up about 2 years back, and it was driven by the need to have a much better way of having a way to connect to people and giving everyone a unique number. This problem in India is accentuated because there are a large number of Indians who don't have any form of identity document acknowledged by the state. They don't have a birth certificate, a school certificate, or anything that proves that they exist. And this is further exacerbated by the fact that migration has gone up. There's a lot of mobility in the country. There are a few 100 million migrants. And if you don't have a document to prove yourself and you migrate, then you don't really get any access to any kind of public service. So the need for including all the people who are left out was one driver to have this program of giving everybody a unique identity number. The other reason from the point of view of the government was in the last decade has increasingly increased the spending on welfare programs and subsidies. Today, India spends about $30 billion a year on direct cash welfare programs to individuals and another $30 billion a year on subsidies on food, fertilizer, and fuel. So $60 billion of subsidies are going to beneficiaries, to individual beneficiaries. And if the underlying identification of beneficiaries is not working, then that entire money, in some sense, there are a lot of challenges in terms of reaching the right people, diversion, fraud, duplicates, ghosts, and all those things. So there's both therefore a driver from an inclusion point of view, as well as a driver from the point of view of making government expenditure more efficient, more equitable, and more effective. So the challenge that we had was really fivefold. We had to design an architecture which was A, scalable, because we had to reach and cover 1.2 billion people. Therefore, it had to be a highly scalable architecture. It required to be done speedily because time was of the essence. We couldn't really wait decades to get everybody in the system. It had to be done in a cost-effective manner so that it didn't spend too much money. It had to be built to have quality in the architecture. And finally, it had to be an innovation platform. So these were the 5 design drivers that we had. Now, what we have done is we have built a highly scalable architecture where the scalability at the front end of enrollment is done by having a large number of partners and enrollment points. Today, we have 20,000 enrollment stations across the country, which we have launched within 2 years. And every day, close to 1 million people are lining up at these locations to enroll into our system. So scalability at the front end comes from this essentially horizontally scalable kind of approach. At the back end, scalability comes from using essentially a large scalable computing network, where you can add commodity servers and software and keep scaling it up. And currently, our backend infrastructure can do what's called as deduplication of 1 million IDs a day, which means that if we get 1 million records, we can actually compare them to all the records we have and then figure out which is a duplicate, which is not a duplicate. And this is done using biometrics. So the front-end scalability comes from having more and more outlets. The back-end scalability comes from adding more and more servers. So fundamentally, because of this scalable architecture at the front and the back, this program, which was conceived around July of 2009, was launched by September of 2010 in 14 months. And today, we have enrolled 110 to 120 million people. We have issued about 65 million numbers, and we're enrolling at the rate of 1 million a day. So it sort of met the thing. And the cost per person comes to less than $3. So it costs us about $2.50 per person to enroll into the system. About $1 is the cost we pay to the front-end enrollment, and the rest is all back-end and mailing costs. So the cost also has been taken care of. Now, to achieve this goal, it had to be a highly federated ecosystem architecture. So we said that we can't be doing this ourselves. So we have a large number of partners whom we call as registrars. We have 50 registrars who are state governments, banks, and other agencies, all of whom deal with the people. In turn, they hire enrollment agencies. We have 75 enrollment agencies who work with them. And we have a system where the software is entirely provided by us. So the technology platform is provided by us. So that's how we standardize on technology, by providing a software platform across the country. Similarly, the processes are standardized by us. So we have a complete process template to make sure that processes are the same. And then we have an operator certification so that the right operators are certified. And we have about 70,000 operators certified in the country today, of whom 20,000 are active at this point. So quality is achieved by standardization of process, people, and technology. Now, finally, the important part. So, in the project itself, there's a lot of innovation. The way we have designed the architecture, because though it's a federated ecosystem, we have a very high level of data granularity on performance of every piece of the ecosystem. So, we can manage this whole thing through analytics. We know exactly what is the quality performance at which location, who's doing well, who's doing badly on a real-time basis. So, because of that, we are able to manage this distributed network. But the final thing is this is also a platform for innovation, because the identity infrastructure which you're creating will provide online authentication capabilities. So it will be probably one of the world's first systems which is completely designed for online identity. And this identity authentication can be done using different authentication factors over any network. It can be a mobile network, the internet network, tablets, smartphones, what have you. And this identity authentication infrastructure is available as an open API, which is published on our website, which can be embedded in any application. So this can be used by different applications who need to verify identity, and therefore many applications are coming up, some in financial inclusion, some in telecom inclusion, some in PDS, some in health. So we see in the next 4 to 5 years a large number of application systems coming on top of this identity infrastructure, which can be used to fundamentally re-engineer the way you deliver public services. So we have tried to build a platform which is scalable, quick, which is highly innovative, both in the way we do it as well as in the innovation that you can build on top of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Nandan. Dr. Ramasamy.
I'm the Secretary, Department of Science and Technology. I have 30 slides, but I have 7 minutes. I'm going to innovate by, first of all, truncating this whole process. To me, the scaling of innovation is working at this crossover point here, the maximum overlap. Every knowledge does not create innovation. Every innovation does not lead to wealth creation, and therefore the interest groups are different. And this question is, how do we maximize the zone of overlap in this process, in the scaling of these innovations? And I have a number of experiential lessons that I have learned, but we are not going to go through them today. To me, it's all about the scaling of innovation is all about the conversion of the risky ideas into innovation through the death valley of these ideas. To me, if there are 100 ideas which are workable, one works. And when how the 100 ideas which works, probably one will profit. This question is, how do we carry the idea into this wealth creation chain? And there's a role of the academic sector, which deals with the risky ideas, the research sector, the industry sector, and so on. And I am going to spend a few minutes about this here. I talk about the migration of knowledge into the market space, the mind to market space. The knowledge goes to know-how, know-how goes to show-how, show to do-how, and to use-how. And this question here is, how do we create a capital space here where academics are worried about the research and the risky ideas, the research talks about the revalidation, and there's a gap between the industry and the research and this call it the trust as a social capital, and how do we build that? And I believe there's a soft money from the government and the hard money from the industry, and how do the financing process eventually take it to the process as a whole. And for this, the real challenge is really the address this question of the migration, the flow of knowledge into the market space. The present models that most of us employ, what I call a transaction model, there's a transaction for knowledge and money. So the knowledge to know-how migration process is in what chemical engineers would call a counter-current flow. Now, can we build a relationship model where the co-current flow operates, and you're talking about social innovations of certain kind? And I believe the present innovation models that we employ, most of them engage private sector funds, hard money. As a consequence, there is a certain level of a competitive excellence and protection of the IPR rigidity. And that is necessary in certain areas. This question that yesterday around the discussions table, out of the 14 people, 10 had used the word collaboration. If you want to talk about a collaborative excellence, then you require a completely different governance model for promoting collaborative excellence in innovation. And I believe synergies and partnerships are essential, and I believe the next generation model should really address the needs of the collaborative excellence. And the earlier one I talked about here is really about that collaborative model in this process. And I'm not going to spend too much of this time. And I'm going to do this, one slide I'm going to show you is about the scouting the innovation, the scouting the innovators, and the scouting the innovation system. So essentially, we are involved in majority of these. I'm going to take one small program called Inspire to give you the scaling that we have been able to perform. This is about building the innovators of tomorrow. We have mounted a program called Inspire. I won't go into the details of those. Under this, every school will get minimum of 2 awardees in Inspire awardees from the government of India, age group of 10 to 15. And these children take a project and go and exhibit it in district level project competition. And we select 5 to 10% to come to the state, from the state to the center. And those of them, the top 1% of the school in the school board get invited to a science camp and meet the Nobel Prize winners and those kind of stuff. And this is under this scheme, we have linked about 1.7 million young people in this whole process of science and innovation mechanism. I will not go into the details of those. Out of this, last year, 210,000 children in the age group of 10 to 15 participated in different exhibitions in the country. 714 of them were selected to the competition level here. Out of the 714 children, 17 had ideas which are worthy of taking an IPR, this age group 10 to 15. And that is an opportunity which is emerging here. It is a scaling issue, and we are now expanding it to 2 million people a year. And this is a science camp I talked about. 17 Nobel Prize winners came and addressed these kids in this whole process. And I believe it is important that the traditional education system is focused on understanding nature. And the question here is not so much on solving problems. So how do we create the teachers enrolled into this process? We have a scheme for 500,000 teachers in the next 5 years' time. And I will very quickly summarize saying what we have learned. Innovation is a product of human knowledge for creation. India seems to enjoy sufficient strength in this area. The scouting process of innovation demands many tools. Some tools seem to be working. And we have played limited roles in the horizontal functions demonstrating these untapped potentials. And I believe scaling innovation for national prosperity would seem to require a new type of social capital viable innovations partnerships. And that is an area of gap which we are addressing at the moment. And I believe innovation is required for fostering innovations for health creation. We need innovation for innovation itself. And I believe I would like to finish this by saying thank you. Scaling innovation is truly a process where all of us have to work together. Thank you very much.
Dr. Garola?
These 30 slides are available to you later.
Yeah, I think we're going to put all the slides together and then have it delivered to all of you, a complete package.
Thank you. My name is Garola. I represent a group called National Informatics Center, which actually is the implementation arm of e-governance to Government of India, state governments, and the district administration. To me, innovation means a creative use of information and communication technology for participative governance. As a group which has been responsible for 30 years, working towards e-governance, we have always found that whatever we have done has fallen short. By the time we build an application and a system, the user comes back and says, this is not what we are looking for. Though they didn't have anything in the past, but whatever was built always fell short. And we had always been thinking as to what is that we are doing wrong, that we find ourselves in always the receiving end. Just to give you a perspective of how things have changed, we worked for 10 years on management of information systems, worked in G2G where government services were required. And then we moved from 2004 onwards into more of a citizen-centric applications. But by the time we could build these citizen-centric applications, which actually were delivered from specific locations, somebody came and said, no, that's not what we are looking for. We are looking for citizen to look at the government as an independent entity. Doesn't want to look at silos in the government, and therefore, please give us a C2G, a single view of the government. And then came the basic issue that all infrastructure that we have built, all systems that we have built, which is a very large number, have started falling into a place that we have shortage of implementation techniques. What has happened essentially, if you see in this slide, when we started, it was basically a top-down governance that we had been working on it, collection of information, managing information, decision support systems. Today, the desire and the demand of e-governance has an acceleration component, and therefore it is non-linear growth. So expectation is that we must move towards a citizen-centric governance. Now, what does it really mean? Yesterday, one of the participants mentioned that you want a bottom-up participative governance process. So the transition is from the top-down governance to the bottom-up governance process, and all our instruments that we have built so far had always been on mostly in case of information systems and the top-down systems, helping government to manage it better. This is the scenario that we have today in the country. We have large number. We might be having approximately 10, 15,000 applications running all over the country. They are all different platforms, different locations, and having different reach. The issue that we started looking at about 2 to 3 years back is that can we try and homogenize them? Can we try and integrate them? And the challenge that we have are right from the people capacity to the commitment from the top level. Today we have very strong commitment from the top to be able to bring about the change. In 2006, we first time tried to integrate all systems and called it an NEGP program, which basically aimed at systematizing the induction of technology for service delivery. Large number of applications, I won't go into it. And then we started looking back and see that we need to create a fourth pillar, which will be the information pillar, which becomes a component for everybody to use it. In order to migrate from that area that we talked about, which is disparate and disjointed systems, we have tried to work on this diagram now, which is a very recent diagram. What we are looking at is the bottom is a national information infrastructure. National knowledge network, national fiber optic network, data centers, security on top is an integrated system. We are now trying to build a mechanism by which we take the existing infrastructure and integrate and merge into a new infrastructure. The second component we are looking at is how do we bring all data together as a single layer. It's an extremely difficult task, we know that, but we are attempting to work it out. At the same time, we are looking at how could we take certain data and push it out into open domain. So you talk about here, the idea is can this data be released for the public for its own usage? The third component we are building up is this service delivery tool. Nandar spoke about service delivery tool. Dr. Kasturi Rangan talked about the GIS platform. These platforms will be integrable into these tools so that we are able to work out a single platform in which a service delivery could really be built. But on top of it is the portal systems, which are either government portals or private portals. So the idea here is that at the end of the day, we should be able to take most of the information. We have today the legislation by which we can make the data available to the people. Once it is in place, and I believe it is in place, we should be able to get the data and have the billion people participating in innovation through information which is made available to them. So there are two basic components we are looking at. Use of information technology to be able to innovatively go to the common man as a participative governance. And second is make this data open to the people so that they can innovate themselves using information. Thank you.
Dr. Chung.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Chung from Korea. My institution is Science and Technology Policy Institute in Seoul, which is mandated with research and analysis of issues related to science, technology, and innovation policy. I'd like to begin with a little bit of introduction to STI and Korea in order to put my presentation into context. As you know, Korea started very late in R&D and innovation, but it has been moving very fast. Today, Korea invests about 3.5% of its GDP in R&D, and it is now the 7th largest investor in R&D in the world. But its R&D focus is on technology development. More than 80% of the money is going to technology development, and it is focused on strategic industries like automobiles, electronic components, communications equipment, and so on and so forth. Major players are private industries. 75% of the industries are being conducted by the private sectors, and the remaining 25% by public sectors. And the major actors are the large enterprises. Top 5 companies account for more than 40% of the manufacturing R&D in Korea. In terms of performance, Korea now produces it's the 12th largest producer of SCI publications, and it is 4th largest producer of patents, both in terms of PTC applications and US patents. And on this basis, Korea has been able to establish world prominence in such areas as semiconductors, LCD, automobiles, shipbuilding, communication equipment, so on and so forth. So we can say that the STI system in Korea is very much oriented towards industrial competitiveness. One of the strategic areas Korea pursued has been ICT. In order to develop ICT, Korea has been taking various measures, including the creation of Ministry of Communications, creation of ICT Promotion Fund, which is the fund combines government budget and private sector contribution, $1 to $1.5 billion every year in order to invest in public-private collaborative research. And they also took various measures in order to promote ICT. And ICT today accounts for 17% of the GDP, and annual exports in ICT products amounts to 114 billion US dollars. So we can say that Korea has become one of the ICT powers. In addition to the ICT development, Korea has been investing heavily in building information infrastructure. So in terms of information infrastructure, Korea belongs to one of the leading groups in the world too. In order to, it is only early in 2000 that Korea began to turn its eye to the needs of the people instead of strengthening industrial competitiveness. So it started to change the STI policy orientation toward the needs of the people. To take advantage of the capabilities in ICT and to bring the benefits of ICT development to the citizen, the Korean government launched the e-government initiatives in 2001. The government established a special committee to implement the e-government initiatives, which directly reported to the president. As one of the initiatives, the government for citizens, what is called G4C, was developed and implemented to facilitate electronic interactions between the government and the citizens. The e-government initiatives in Korea aims to achieve 2 objectives. One is to upgrade government services. In order to upgrade government services, they established what they call G4C, which is a system to link people to social insurance information system, covering health insurance, pension, unemployment compensation, industrial accident compensation, and so on and so forth. Another system is home tax service system, which enables online filing of tax returns, electronic tax payment, tax consultation, issuance of tax-related certificates and documents. And another one is e-procurement system, which is made to simplify the procurement process and to ensure transparent and efficient government procurement. Another objective is to improve the efficiency of government operation. For that, they established the National Finance Information System, which is a system that enables interagency, that is a kind of interagency network of financial information for budget planning and allocation, accounting, and settlement of accounts. And another one is National Education Information System, which is to centrally manage the educational records of schools and agencies related to education. And another one is Local Government Information Networks, which links local governments as well as the central governments for government operation. And lastly, they also developed the Government Personnel Management System. Here I have a couple of examples of the system. This is electronic procurement system, which links the vendors to government agencies and financial institutions and all related agencies in order to streamline the procurement processes. The user of the system has been increasing very rapidly. The number of users and transactions, as you see on the screen, has been on rise over the past years. Another system is home tax system, which enables you to clear up your tax businesses with the government. You can interact with the government through the system, and when you have any tax problems, when you have to pay, when you have to confirm the tax to pay, and so on and so forth. So you can also consult with the government about tax-related issues through the system. Here again, the home tax system has been used widely, and the users have been increasing dramatically. Another interesting program is G4C system, which is a framework of internet, which is a framework to help the people. This system links people to national tax services, insurance systems, and various government portals through which they can interact with the government. They can receive public services from this system, and they also can express their own ideas to the government. So this is very user-oriented, people-oriented system. The user of the system has been increasing very rapidly. So over the past 10 or so years, Korea has made tremendous development in this area. And the United Nations Global E-Government Survey ranked Korea first in the world in terms of E-Government Development Index 2010. And very many other international organizations recognize the Korean system. And the factors behind the success, I think there are several: strong infrastructure, communication networks, internet users, diffusion of mobile communication, widely diffused, and comparative advantage in IT industry, and political democratization and early adopters of young people of new technologies. But still, we have problems. The bureaucratic system is still very closed. The legal system is very complex. That really cannot really be taken care of by the system we have built. And another problem is the society's lack of tolerance to different ideas and so on and so forth. Well, I think this is what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Sylvia.
Thank you. I'll also be very brief. I just have 3 slides, which I think is interesting. Sweden, we've just adopted this new approach called challenge-driven innovation, and we've been talking about frugal innovation the past 2 days, and I think frugal innovation is one category of challenge-driven innovation. There are several different types of challenge-driven innovation. But we tried to look at it from a historical perspective. It's a little, for an economic historian, it's a little simplified. But if you look at challenge-driven innovation from a historical perspective, if you look at the Industrial Revolution, perhaps the main drivers and the challenges were, military power and commercial gain. So those were the challenges, perhaps in those days, and the funders were the kings and patrons. In the post-war generation, and I'm sorry, this is perhaps a very Western view, but in the post-war generation, the main drivers were the Cold War, the mission-driven research, the arms race, and also the establishment of the welfare states. And in this phase, the funders were to a large extent states or national governments. And today, we are in the sort of what you could call the third generation of challenge-driven innovation, where the main drivers are global societal challenges. And the difference, I think, compared to the other eras is that we're talking about extremely complex governance models that are required to be able to address these challenges. And it requires these public-private partnership solutions at a different scale than perhaps we've seen before. So what are the key features in what we call a grand challenge-driven innovation approach? The first one, which has been mentioned, is that challenges are business opportunities. This is what we've been talking about the past 2 days. The second one is the extremely important involvement of users and demand, perhaps again to another level than when we look at the traditional technology push-driven innovation. The third one is that it requires new collaborations across sectors, across research fields, and across actors. And again, this has been mentioned in the past few days. And the fourth one is the complex governance. Yesterday in the presentation where the proposal was made to have a global cooperation on training medical staff, I think it's one example of that, of a proposal that seems extremely relevant but requires new approaches to international cooperation. And another dimension of challenge-driven innovation is, is that it has a very strong international dimension, and we're talking about global problems, but often it will require local solutions. So just to finish up, challenge-driven innovation at Vinnova, the way we do it at the Swedish government agency, we've worked with business intelligence, we've worked with SWOTs, where we look at the strengths and weaknesses and workshops, and we've come up with these 4 areas that we are working with in challenge-driven innovation: future healthcare, sustainable cities, information society, and competitive production. Nothing revolutionary. But we did a call then, and you can find the information on the net. But what we did is a call, which I will show you here, where we just basically put out the question and said, who can contribute to solutions in these areas? And we received an unprecedented number of applications. And another new thing we're trying at Vinnova is that we are trying to fund a lot of small projects in the beginning and then scaling it up or down, as you want to speak, increasing the investment gradually, but reducing the number of projects. And so here are just 2 examples. I think, as Sam said, this will be all made available to you, the presentations. But one, this is a very interesting example, using actually, I think, a combination of information systems, large companies, universities, to create efficient traffic and transport solutions. And another one is looking at attractive cities, trying to combine everything from urban agriculture and fish production to sewage treatment to system solutions for green surfaces in a concept, cross-disciplinary concept. And finally, I was just in Stanford because we inaugurated something which we call Innovative Sweden exhibition. But what it shows is how this new approach of working with problems, and I don't know if you can see this, but it says the problem was that more than 1 billion people lack access to safe water. And so the solution that an entrepreneur, a designer actually came up with was that a product which uses nothing but sunshine to produce safe and hot water in 2 to 6 hours. So this is the container. It uses the heat and the UV rays from the sun and cleans the water in 4 to 6 hours. And this is a product that is now being sort of scaled up with the cooperation of the United Nations and the World Wildlife Fund to be sold in a number of countries around the world. Finally, I think I'm being followed by the European Commission, so we're not alone in these efforts. So there are a lot of initiatives today looking at challenge-based innovation, and that was my presentation. Thank you.
Next poet.
So, good morning. My name is Philippe de Taxis-Dupoët. I am Minister Counselor here at the delegation of the European Union. So the European Union, 27 member states, about 500 million people, very large, probably the largest economic area in the world. And I'm here today to explain very briefly, and in particular, the concept behind the Innovation Union, that is a strategy launched by the European Union about 1 year ago. So the concept is actually very simple. I could summarize it by united in diversity. And I think you understand that very well in India because we share this with India. There are a number of member states in the European Union. Some are performing very well. They are the best performers in the world, and some are less performing. And what we are trying to do is actually to pool resources, human resources, financial resources. We are trying to invest more and to invest more together at EU level so that we increase the scale of our efforts, the innovation scale, and I think that's well in line with the topic of this session about scaling up. That's what we are trying to do in Europe, scaling up our efforts so that we match the scale of the challenges better, and also the scale of the emerging countries all over the world. India is certainly one of them. What is important in the innovation strategy is maybe summarized in what we call the knowledge triangle. we are trying to combine three angles of this triangle. First one is the production of new knowledge. We need new knowledge. We need new knowledge through scientific research. Excellence in scientific research. We need also to disseminate this knowledge, and that is the education. And we need, of course, to exploit this knowledge, to transform these scientific results into new products, new services, to improve industrial competitiveness, and at the end of the day, to provide people what they need from innovation. I will go actually very quickly on the elements of the innovation strategy because they have been already mentioned several times. There are a number of framework conditions which are absolutely essential, and that is in particular the public procurement. In Europe, public procurement, this is about 16% of the EU GDP, and that is a leverage that we cannot use today enough to provide and to incentives for businesses to innovate. So this is one of the key framework conditions together with IPR and the fiscal conditions and also the human resources. We need in Europe more students in science and technology. We need actually not only more students but better students and also the mobility of these students and researchers. That's one of the focus of the strategy we have. We also would like to focus on a number of major societal challenges. The first through what we call the European Innovation Partnership, public-private partnership in particular. The first such European Innovation Partnership is focusing on aging, active aging. As you know, this is a problem in Europe and in some other countries in the world, and we have some in the pipelines on agriculture, on raw materials. Last but not least, we have at EU level important programs for research and innovation. We are preparing the future ones. The European Commission has put on the table a proposal for a program of 80 billion euro over 7 years, mixing research and innovation in a coherent way, and we would like very much this new program to have simplified access. That's a very practical thing, but very important for innovation. When we put together a policy and instruments, we should make sure in Europe that these instruments can actually be used by the people who need it, and that's the simplification process that we are trying to do in Europe at the moment. Thank you.